Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with a video today about some of the pros and cons of moving to Spain in 2022. I did a video on this topic back in 2020 before the coronavirus pandemic, and somebody the other day in the comment section said, why don't you update that video? And that's what I'm going to do. Now today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, and I'll tell you a little bit more about NordVPN during the video. Now obviously a lot of the pros that I spoke about back in 2020 is still the same, and obviously a lot of the cons that I spoke about back in 2020 are also the same. For example, some of the pros that I talked about back then: the weather, still good in this country, especially in this part of Spain, no complaints there. Spain is still a safe country and you can have a fantastic quality of life here. And when it comes to some of the cons, no changes there either. The job market still sucks. If you don't speak the language, it can be a bit of a con living here. And bureaucracy in this country still stinks. In fact, I think it might be even worse than it was back in 2020. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. And it's also worth noting that some of the pros and some of the cons may vary according to where you are in the country. For example, things are not the same in the north, especially when it comes to the weather, as they are in the south. So let's get the video started and see if there are still more pros than cons of living in this country, or have things changed over the last couple of years. Let's find out. Or maybe I should do a video on some of the pros and cons of being a dog in this country. What do you reckon? Now, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today could be considered cons, but they could also have some pros related to them. For example, when it comes to housing here in Spain can be a con for some, but it does have some pro things about it. And what I mean by that is that if you're not used to living in a flat, you might not like living here in Spain. Flats can often be small, they can be old, and if you're looking for big, spacious living, not easy to find in a lot of places in this country, especially in big cities. And a lot of the times you're going to be paying a lot of money for these small apartments. However, one of the pros of flat living here in Spain is that Spanish cities are built for flat living. And what I mean by that is that you're going to have lots and lots of services no more than 100 meters away from where you are living. If you live in one of the cities here in Spain, you might not need to have a car because you're going to have everything close to where you are. You're going to have supermarkets, you're going to have bakeries, you're going to have department stores, all at a stone's throw away. So while living in a flat might be a con at first, all of the services that you have around you can turn it into a pro, in my opinion. Now, one of the biggest changes in Spain since 2020 is obviously going to be the financial situation of this country. And if it's possible, Spain is even broker than it was 2 years ago. The coronavirus pandemic absolutely decimated the country's economy, and it still hasn't recovered from pre-2020 levels. Billions and billions of euros are being pumped into the economy by the European Union, and the Spanish government thinks that that is going to be the solution to the economy's woes. But basically what that means for the average consumer here in Spain is that we're going to get less services for our money. Taxes are going to increase. So more taxes, less services for our money, definitely a con of moving to this country at the moment. A country being broke is not the same as a person being broke or a company being broke. The changes are a lot more subtle. You might not realize them at first, but they will have an impact on your life. And as I said, the government is currently increasing taxes because that's one of the only mechanisms it has in order to get more cash. So the economy here in Spain at the moment, a definite con of moving to this country in 2022. Now, another pro-con of living in this country is the open spaces or the parks. Some people say they're good, some people say they're bad, and in my opinion, they could improve a lot. Yes, Spain is a fairly big country compared to other European countries, and there are plenty of open spaces. However, a lot of spaces are not easily accessible, places that you can't get into, and you'll quite often see signs up saying "coto," or hunting areas, and definitely not recommended to go into those areas. And a lot of the times the open spaces that you do find, especially at weekends, can be quite crowded. And when it comes to local parks like the one that I am in now, they can also be a bit of a letdown, especially in this part of the country. As you can see, not a lot of grass going on here, and the grassed areas that you can find are normally covered in dog poo. And if you come here in the morning at the weekend, after young people have had their drinking sessions, you'll also find a lot of rubbish. So dirty parks full of dog poo can be a bit of a con. But a pro is that there are a lot of parks. Okay, they might not be perfect, but at least we have access to them. Now we'll take a break in the video here to talk about and thank the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. If you have never heard of a VPN, it stands for Virtual Private Network, and it will protect your internet connection and privacy online. If you have a VPN, it means you can use the internet safely because your data is encrypted and your online identity protected because your IP address is hidden. So if you use public Wi-Fi like I often do when I'm out and about traveling, a VPN is an absolute must. A VPN will also come in handy at home because you can use the internet anonymously and your browsing history, usernames, passwords and bank details are kept secure. And if you love to watch content, having NordVPN will allow you to access websites in other countries that might be geo-blocked here in Spain. For example, Netflix UK, Netflix USA and BBC iPlayer, to name just a few. All you have to do is connect to a server in the country where you want to access the content, and away you go. You can use NordVPN on up to 6 devices, so you can have it on your phone, your tablet, your desktop or your laptop computer all at the same time, and it works on both Apple and Android devices. Now if you want to check out NordVPN for yourself, Nord is celebrating its birthday, and if you click the link in the description box, you'll get a 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 1 month free and a bonus gift. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So click the link below, take advantage of this special offer, and start your safe internet experience with NordVPN. Now back to the video. Now, a definite pro about living here in Spain is the quality of the cities in this country. Spain has fantastic cities, fantastic architecture to see, a fantastic bar and restaurant scene here in Spain also. And a lot of cities are a mix of classic architecture with modern services. Add fantastic public transport to that mix in the majority of cities here in Spain, and you get a definite pro about living in this country. Okay, I said before that maybe the style of living is not the best. Living in flats might not be for everybody, but the amount of services that you get make up for that. And quite a few cities here in Spain are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, so that adds to their value. Now, a definite pro-con of living in this country is the language. It can be a pro for some, it can be a con for others. And if you've watched my videos over the years, you'll know that I always say that it is fundamental to learn the language before you come to this country, either on tourism or for living purposes. Even a B1 level will suffice in my opinion, and you can improve that level the longer you are here. And the reason learning the language is a pro, for obvious reasons, is that it's going to open doors that wouldn't open if you didn't speak the language. And your life will be a whole lot easier here if you make an effort to learn the Spanish language. For a lot of people, learning the language can be a problem. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they don't think it's necessary, maybe they're living in a part of Spain with a lot of foreign residents and you don't need to learn the language. But to be honest, I could not imagine my life here in Spain without Spanish language skills. And another thing is, if you do make an effort to speak the language, people here will greatly appreciate it. People will be friendlier towards you, and you'll also be able to develop relationships that you wouldn't be able to develop if you didn't speak the language. Fairly clear, right? And what I will say is one of the cons of living in this country is the quality of the coffee. Absolute rubbish. Now, another pro about living in this country is that Spain is a fairly pet-friendly country. Now that I have a dog, that is something that is important to me. It hasn't always been that way. Pets have for a long time been treated badly, in my opinion, here in Spain. For example, you couldn't take them to many places. You were limited to what you could do if you had a pet, but that luckily is changing. And there are now plenty of hotels where you can take your pet, plenty of places where you can leave your pet, and there are even some businesses that you can visit with your pet. For example, Decathlon sporting stores and other stores like that. So a definite pro that Spain is becoming more and more pet friendly as the years go by. Now, another pro about living here in Spain is that there are a lot of foreign resident communities around the country, big foreign resident communities. So if you want to come here and find people similar to yourself, that is possible. Not necessarily my case, but I know a lot of people are looking for that here in Spain. So for example, if you go to places like Malaga, if you go to places like Alicante, Valencian community, for example, you can find big expat communities, or foreign resident communities, I should say, because some people don't like the word expat. So definitely a pro for a lot of people that these communities exist. And let's be honest, there are some people that want to find things that remind them of home. For example, British supermarkets, and other people that speak their language. So a pro for some, even though it's not necessarily a pro for me. And the final thing I'm going to talk about today, and unfortunately it is also a con, and that's the political situation in this country and the corruption that this country suffers. Now, I've been living here for 22 years, and over that time I thought that the political situation would get better, that corruption would disappear, but unfortunately it continues to rear its ugly head. And to top it all off, the political situation in this country has been blown apart by the emergence of new political parties, for example on the extreme right and on the extreme left. So extremism in politics, one of the things that I definitely don't like about Spain. And if political support for the extremes in this country continues to grow, I don't know what the future holds. And on the topic of corruption, it seems that that is something that this country can't get rid of. Over the years, there's been scandal after scandal after scandal involving the main political parties here, and unfortunately another political scandal popped up a couple of weeks ago. So keep that in mind, that the political situation in this country never seems to get any better. In fact, it seems to be getting worse. And corruption is something that plagues the country decade after decade, year after year, unfortunately. So a couple of cons, and if things like that don't bother you, then it shouldn't be a problem, but they definitely bother me. So I'll wrap the video up there as some of the pros and cons of moving to Spain in 2022. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the video out as you normally do. If you're planning on coming to live in this country, let me know what you thought of the video. If you are already living here in Spain, let us know what some of your pros and cons are and whether you agreed with what I said in the video. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.